Hello and welcome back to English in Advance. I am so happy to see you here. I am Jessica, your host for today, and I have a really special episode prepared just for you. Today we are going to focus on something that I know so many of you struggle with, and that is listening comprehension. You know, it is one thing to read a book or write an email, but when it comes to actually understanding what people are saying in real time, that can feel like a completely different game, and it can be really frustrating sometimes. But do not worry, because that is exactly what we are here to work on today. I want you to imagine that we are just sitting in a coffee shop, having a nice relaxed conversation, and by the end of our time together today, you are going to feel much more confident about your ability to understand English. So, take a deep breath, relax your shoulders, and let's get started on this journey to better listening together. First, I want to talk about why listening can be so difficult. You study your vocabulary lists, you learn your grammar rules, and you feel prepared. But then you turn on a movie or talk to a native speaker, and suddenly it feels like they are speaking at 1,000,000 miles an hour. Does that sound familiar to you? It happens to almost everyone learning a new language. The reason is often that in school we learn very clear, slow, and perfect English. But in the real world, people speak quickly. They mumble, they use slang, and they connect their words together. This is called connected speech, and it is a huge part of why listening is hard. For example, when I say, "What are you going to do?" in a textbook, it looks like 5 separate words, but when I speak naturally, it sounds more like, "What you gonna do?" If you are listening for those 5 separate words, you might miss the meaning entirely because your brain is looking for something that isn't there. So the first step to improving your listening is to stop trying to hear every single word perfectly and instead start focusing on the big picture, the overall message of what is being said. Let's try a little exercise right now to practice this. I am going to say a sentence, and I want you to close your eyes for a moment and just listen to the sound of it. Do not worry about spelling or grammar. Just listen to the flow. Here we go. I'm going to the store later to buy some milk. Did you hear how going to became gonna and to buy kind of blended together? It sounds like to buy. When you accept that English speakers blend words like this, it stops sounding like a mistake and starts sounding like a natural rhythm. This rhythm is incredibly important for your brain to recognize. If you treat every sentence like a robot reading from a script, you will always be a step behind. You have to train your ears to hear the music of the language, not just the data. So when you are listening to English, whether it is this podcast, a movie, or a friend, try to hum along with the rhythm in your head. It sounds funny, I know, but it helps your brain get used to the speed and the ups and downs of the voice. Another huge part of listening comprehension is context. Often, you do not need to understand every single word to understand what is happening. Your brain is actually very good at guessing or predicting what comes next. Think about when you are in your own country listening to people speak. If you are at a train station and you hear someone say ticket and time, you instantly know they are talking about travel, even if you miss the rest of the sentence. You can do this in English too. Let me give you an example. Imagine you hear someone say, "I put it in the," and then the sentence gets cut off, but you hear a car horn. You can guess they might be saying car or street. Or if you are in a kitchen and someone says it's too hot, they are probably talking about the oven or the food, not the weather outside. Using these clues from the environment helps you fill in the blanks when you miss a word. So do not panic when you miss a word. Just take a breath, look around, and ask yourself what is probably happening here. Usually, your guess will be right. Now, let's talk about the words you do not know. It is very common to freeze when you hear a word you have never learned before. You stop listening to the rest of the sentence because you are stuck on that one word trying to figure out what it means. But this is a trap. If you stop listening, you lose the context, and without context, you cannot guess the meaning of the new word. Instead, I want you to become a detective. When you hear a new word, mark a mental note of it and keep listening. Look at the other words in the sentence. Are they happy words or sad words? Is the person talking about something technical or something casual? For instance, if I say the situation was very dire and we needed to act immediately, you might not know the word dire. But you hear situation, act immediately, and the tone of my voice, which is serious. You can figure out that dire means something bad or dangerous without needing a dictionary. This skill, learning from context, will save you so much time and make listening much less stressful because you realize that you do not need to know every word in the dictionary to understand English. I want to take a moment to tell you a little story to help practice this. Picture this in your mind. It is a rainy Tuesday afternoon. A man named Tom is running down the street. He is wearing a heavy coat and holding an umbrella, but the wind is very strong. He runs into a small coffee shop, shaking the water off his umbrella. He walks up to the counter and looks at the menu. The barista asks him what he would like. Tom smiles and says, "I would love a hot coffee, please. Something to warm me up." The barista nods and starts making the drink. Tom looks around the shop and sees an empty seat by the window. He walks over, sits down, and sighs with relief. Okay, now let me ask you a question. Based on that story, how was Tom feeling before he sat down? You probably guessed he was cold, wet, and maybe in a hurry. Did I use the word cold? Yes. Did I use the word wet? Not explicitly, but I said he was shaking water off his umbrella and it was raining. Did I use the word hurried? I said he was running. So you understood the situation perfectly. This is exactly how listening comprehension works in real life. You gather little pieces of information and build a complete picture in your mind. Now let's move on to something that is very specific to the B1 and B2 level, and that is understanding different accents and speed. At this stage in your learning, you are probably moving beyond the standard textbook English you hear in classrooms. You might be hearing British English, American English, Australian English, or any number of regional accents. This can be confusing because the same word can sound completely different. For example, the word water. In American English, it sounds a bit like water with a hard D sound. In British English, it sounds more like woe-to with a crisp T sound. If you have only ever heard one, the other might sound strange to you. The trick here is exposure. You need to listen to as many different types of English as you can. Do not just stick to one show or one podcast. Try watching a British TV show one week and an American movie the next. Your brain is amazing at adapting, but it needs time to get used to the new sounds. At first, it might sound like a blur, but the more you listen, the more your brain will adjust to the new melody of that accent. Also, we have to talk about the speed of speech. Native speakers often speak very quickly, and we use something called reduced speech or elision. This is when we drop sounds to make speaking faster and smoother. For example, the phrase next week. We rarely pronounce the T at the end of next. We say next week. Or ask her. We say ask her. The H disappears. If you are listening for that H, you won't hear it, and you might get confused. So when you are practicing, try to notice which sounds seem to disappear. It is not lazy speaking, it is just efficient. When you start to expect these dropped sounds, you will understand much more. You can practice this yourself by trying to say sentences as fast as you can while still being clear. It helps you feel what it is like to push the words together. Let's do a little practice session right here in the podcast. I am going to speak a paragraph at a natural conversational speed. I want you to listen to it, and I will repeat it twice. The first time, just listen and try to get the general idea. Do not write anything down. Just close your eyes and visualize the story. Are you ready? Here we go. Yesterday, I decided to go to the new library that opened near my house. I've been wanting to visit for weeks, but I was just too busy with work. When I finally walked in, I was amazed at how big it was. There were shelves of books everywhere, and people were sitting in comfortable chairs, reading quietly. I found a great book about history and sat down near the window. I spent 2 hours there just reading and enjoying the peace and quiet. It was exactly what I needed after a long week. Okay, let me say that one more time for you. Listen again for any details you might have missed the first time. Yesterday, I decided to go to the new library that opened near my house. I have been wanting to visit for weeks, but I was just too busy with work. When I finally walked in, I was amazed at how big it was. There were shelves of books everywhere, and people were sitting in comfortable chairs reading quietly. I found a great book about history and sat down near the window. I spent 2 hours there just reading and enjoying the peace and quiet. It was exactly what I needed after a long week. Now, without looking back, think about the questions. Where did I go? I went to the library. How long was I there? I was there for 2 hours. Why did I go? Because I needed peace and quiet after a long week. If you got those answers, your listening comprehension is working great. You picked out the important details from the whole story. Now, let's discuss a very practical tool you can use every day to improve, and that is subtitles. I know many of you like to watch movies or TV shows in English, and you probably use subtitles in your own language. While that is comfortable, it can actually slow down your listening progress because your eyes are reading your native language instead of your ears training on English. I want to encourage you to switch the subtitles to English. This way, you are hearing the word and seeing the word at the same time, which creates a strong connection in your brain. If you watch a movie and you can understand most of it with English subtitles, try turning them off completely for just 5 minutes. It might be hard at first, but challenge yourself. If you get lost, turn them back on. It is like lifting weights at the gym. You have to push yourself a little bit to get stronger. Do not be afraid to rewind and listen to a sentence 3 or 4 times until you get it. That repetition is gold for your brain. Another thing that really helps is listening to things you are genuinely interested in. If you love cooking, listen to a cooking podcast in English. If you love technology, listen to a tech review. When you care about the topic, your brain pays much closer attention. You will be motivated to understand because you want to know the information, not just because you want to learn English. This changes your mindset from studying to discovering, and that makes a huge difference. Plus, you will learn vocabulary that is relevant to your life, which makes it much easier to remember. For example, if you like football, listen to a commentary on a match. The commentators speak very fast, but if you know the game, you will understand what is happening, even if you miss a few words. This is a fantastic way to build confidence because you realize, hey, I can understand this. We should also talk about the emotional side of listening. When we are nervous, we listen less effectively. It is a scientific fact. Stress blocks your brain's ability to process language. So if you are in a conversation and you start to feel panicked because you think you didn't understand, try to take a deep breath. Smile. It is okay to ask the person to repeat themselves. You can say phrases like, "Sorry, could you say that again?" Or, "I didn't catch that last part, could you repeat it?" Native speakers say these things all the time to each other. It is not a sign of failure. In fact, showing that you care about understanding what they say makes the other person feel respected. So take the pressure off yourself. You do not need to be perfect. You just need to communicate. When you relax, your ears open up and you will be surprised at how much more you can hear. Let's try another listening exercise, this time focusing on specific details. I am going to describe a person, and I want you to listen carefully to their appearance. Imagine I am your friend describing someone I met at a party. I am going to say this only once, so pay close attention. I met a really interesting guy named Mark at the party last night. He was quite tall, maybe 6 feet, and he had short curly hair that was dark brown. He was wearing a blue checkered shirt and jeans, and he had these really cool black glasses on. What stood out the most was that he was wearing bright red sneakers, which looked awesome with his outfit. Okay, now pause for a second. What color was his hair? It was dark brown. What was he wearing on his feet? Bright red sneakers. See how you can pick out specific details even when the sentence is a bit long? This is an important skill for when you are giving or receiving instructions in English, like at work or when traveling. I also want to mention the importance of filler words. In real conversations, people do not speak in perfect sentences. They say things like, like, you know, and sort of. For a long time, learners are taught to ignore these, but they are actually part of the rhythm. If you get distracted every time someone says, you will lose the flow of the conversation. Instead, treat these words like just background noise, a little pause for the speaker to think. For example, if I say, I was thinking about going to the beach tomorrow, the important words are thinking, going, beach, and tomorrow. The rest is just mental filler. If you can filter out the filler words and focus only on the content words, usually the nouns, verbs, and adjectives, your comprehension will skyrocket. It is like having a filter in your camera that blurs the background and focuses on the main subject. Now, let's consider some different scenarios where you might use English and how listening applies. Imagine you are at an airport. This is a high-stress environment with lots of noise. You might hear an announcement like, "Attention passengers, Flight 404 to London is now boarding at Gate 12. If you are listening for every word, the echo and the speed might mess you up. But if you are listening for key information, you just need to catch 404, London, boarding, and Gate 12. That is all you need to know where to go. Training yourself to hunt for these information words is a superpower. You can practice this by listening to news reports. News reporters often speak very clearly, but they pack a lot of information into a short time. Try to listen to a short news clip and write down the who, what, where, and when. Who did it? What happened? Where did it happen? When did it happen? If you can get those 4 things, you have understood the main point. As we continue, I want to talk about consistency. Listening comprehension is not something you can fix in one day. It is a muscle that needs daily exercise. You do not need to sit down for 3 hours a day. Just 15 minutes of active listening every day is better than 3 hours once a week. Active listening means you are fully focused on the audio, not checking your phone or doing the dishes. You are listening, maybe taking notes, repeating phrases, or just visualizing the story. It is the difference between hearing music in the background and actually sitting down to listen to the lyrics and the instruments. Both are nice, but only one makes you a better musician. Make English a part of your daily routine. Listen to this podcast on your way to work. Listen to an English song while you are cooking and try to write down the chorus. Change the language settings on your phone or computer to English. Surround yourself with the sound of English so your brain gets used to it as a normal part of your life. I also want to encourage you to speak more. It sounds strange to say speaking helps listening, but they are connected. When you know how to pronounce a word correctly, you will recognize it instantly when someone else says it. If you have never said the word schedule out loud, when you hear it, it might not register because the sound is unfamiliar to your own mouth. So, repeat after me sometimes. When I give an example, say it out loud. Feel the words in your mouth. This builds a phonological loop in your brain, a memory bank for sounds. It helps you match what you hear with what you know how to say. It bridges the gap between the sound and the meaning. Let's do one final story to wrap things up. This one is a bit faster, just to test your progress. Close your eyes again. Imagine you are walking through a busy park. The sun is shining and birds are singing. You see 2 friends sitting on a bench having a conversation. One of them looks excited. She is waving her hands and smiling. She says, "You won't believe what happened to me this morning. I was walking my dog near the lake when I found a wallet in the grass. It was full of money and cards, but no ID. I didn't know what to do, so I took it to the police station. The officer was so nice and said I did a good thing. I hope they find the owner because I know how stressful it is to lose something important." Her friend nods and says, "Wow, that is amazing. You are so honest. I hope they find the owner too." Okay, open your eyes. What did the woman find? A wallet? Where was it? Near the lake in the grass. What did she do with it? She took it to the police station. And how did her friend feel? She thought it was amazing and that the woman was honest. If you could follow that, you are doing incredibly well. You are processing connected speech, emotion, and narrative structure all at once. Now, I want to take you a little deeper into the specific sounds that make English tricky and how you can train your brain to hear them even when they seem invisible. One of the biggest secrets to understanding spoken English is something called the schwa sound. Now, that might sound like a technical term, but do not let it scare you. It is actually the most common sound in the English language, and you hear it constantly in almost every sentence. The schwa is a very short, weak sound that sounds like a soft "ugh." It usually happens in unstressed syllables of words. For example, take the word about. We do not say about, we say about. The first sound is the schwa. Or take the word banana. We do not say banana. We say bunana. Do you hear those weak sounds? When you are reading, you see the letter A, but when you listen, you hear This is why listening can be so hard. Your brain is looking for the strong, clear vowel sounds you see in writing, but what you hear is these weak, relaxed sounds. To improve your listening, you have to get used to the idea that many vowels in unstressed positions turn into this oo sound. Once you accept this, words like chocolate, which sounds like chocolate, or family, which sounds like family, will start making much more sense to your ears. You will stop looking for the missing letters and start hearing the rhythm of the word as it is actually spoken. Let's try to hear this in action with a longer sentence. I am going to say a sentence, and I want you to listen specifically for the small, weak sounds. Here is the sentence. I would like to have a salad for lunch today. Now, let's break it down naturally. I would becomes I'd, becomes just a quick sound, have becomes ave. A is salad is salad, for is fur, lunch is clear, and today. Put it all together at natural speed and it sounds like, I'd like to have a salad for lunch today. Do you hear how many times the schwa sound pops up? It is everywhere. If you are trying to hear the full word have or for, you might miss it because it is so short and weak. But if you are listening for the rhythm and the stressed words, which are like salad, lunch, and today, the sentence is very clear. This is the key to advanced listening. You do not need to hear every letter. You just need to catch the stressed words and let the weak words flow over you. Now, I want to shift our focus to something else that often confuses learners. And that is the difference between listening for facts and listening for feelings. This is especially important for B2 level learners because at this stage, you need to understand not just what is happening, but how people feel about it. In English, we often use our tone of voice to change the meaning of a sentence completely. For example, if I say the simple word really with a flat voice, it just means I am asking for confirmation. But if I say really with a high pitch at the end, it means I am surprised. Or if I say really with a low, flat tone, it might mean I do not believe you or I am disappointed. The words are the same, but the meaning is totally different. To practice this, you can try watching a scene from a TV show with the sound off first. Just look at the actors' faces and body language. Try to guess if they are happy, angry, sad, or joking. Then, turn the sound on and listen to see if their tone matches your guess. This helps you connect the visual emotion with the audio sound, which trains your brain to hear the emotion in the voice, not just the words. Another excellent way to practice listening for feelings is by paying attention to tag questions. You know these? They are the little questions we add at the end of sentences, like, "It is a nice day, isn't it?" Or, "You are coming, aren't you?" The tone of voice here is crucial. If I say, "It's nice, isn't it?" and my voice goes up at the end, I am really asking a question because I am not sure. But if I say, "It's nice, isn't it?" and my voice goes down at the end, I am not really asking a question. I am just making conversation and expecting you to agree. It is more of a statement than a question. Noticing if the voice goes up or down at the end of a sentence can tell you so much about what the speaker really means. Are they unsure? Are they confident? Are they inviting you to talk? Listening for these ups and downs, which we call intonation, is like having a secret key to understanding the real message behind the words. Let's talk about a very common scenario that causes a lot of anxiety: talking on the phone. This is often the hardest part of listening comprehension because you cannot see the person's face or lips. You lose all those visual clues we talked about earlier. So what can you do to make phone calls easier? First, do not be afraid to control the conversation. You can politely ask the person to slow down. You can say, "Could you please speak a little more slowly? I am on a mobile phone and the connection is not perfect." Even if the connection is fine, this is a polite way to buy yourself some processing time. Another great trick is to repeat back what you heard. This serves two purposes. It makes sure you understood correctly, and it gives your brain an extra second to process the information. For example, if someone says, "We need to meet on Tuesday at 3 p.m. to discuss the budget," you can reply, "Okay, so I will see you on Tuesday at 3 p.m. for the budget meeting." This is called active listening, and it is a skill that even native speakers use to avoid misunderstandings. I would like to share a story with you now that involves a bit of a misunderstanding, just to show you how important context and tone are. Imagine a woman named Sarah. She is at work and she sends an email to her boss asking for a day off. Her boss replies with a very short email that just says, "Fine, go ahead." Sarah reads this email and feels worried. She thinks her boss is angry because the answer was so short and blunt. She spends the whole day worrying that she is in trouble. However, the next day, she sees her boss in person, and her boss is smiling and asks, "Are you excited for your day off?" Sarah realizes that her boss was not angry at all. She was just busy. If Sarah had heard her boss say, "Fine, go ahead," in person, she would have heard the normal, neutral tone. But because she read it, she invented a negative tone in her head. This teaches us that when we are listening, we must be careful not to add our own emotions to the speaker's words. We have to listen to what is actually there, not what we fear is there. When you are listening to English, try to stay objective. Listen to the facts and the tone. Do not let your imagination create a meaning that isn't there. Now let's move on to a more advanced practice technique that I love. It is called shadowing. Shadowing is when you listen to a sentence and then immediately repeat it out loud, trying to match the speaker's speed and rhythm as closely as possible. It is like you are their shadow. This is incredibly powerful for listening because it forces you to pay attention to every little sound. You cannot repeat something quickly if you haven't heard it correctly. Let's try a simple one together. I will say a phrase and I want you to repeat it instantly, just like an echo. Are you ready? Here we go. I have been looking forward to seeing you. Try to say it exactly as I did. I have been looking forward to seeing you. Did you notice how been sounds like been and to before seeing sounds like tuh? When you shadow, you are training your mouth to make the same sounds as a native speaker, which in turn trains your ear to recognize them. It connects your physical speaking ability with your mental listening ability. I recommend doing this for just 5 minutes a day with a podcast or a news clip. You will be amazed at how much faster your listening improves when your mouth gets used to the speed of the language. Another challenge for B1 and B2 learners is understanding idioms and phrasal verbs. These are phrases where the meaning is not clear from the individual words. For example, if someone says, "I ran into an old friend yesterday," you might picture someone physically running into a person and knocking them over. But run into, in this context, means to meet someone by chance. If you are listening word for word, you might get confused. You might think, why did they run into their friend? Are they okay? But if you are listening for context, you will understand that it is a social interaction. To get better at this, you need to listen to English as much as possible so that these phrases become familiar. At first, you have to translate them in your head, but the goal is to hear run into and instantly think meet. The best way to learn is to keep a small notebook of phrases you hear in movies or podcasts that you don't understand. Look them up later, and then try to use them yourself. Once you use a phrase, you will hear it much more clearly in the future. Let's do a listening exercise now that focuses on these kinds of phrases. I am going to tell you about my weekend, and I am going to use some common phrasal verbs. I want you to listen and see if you can figure out what I did based on the context, even if you are not 100% sure of the specific verb. Here we go. On Saturday, I slept in until 10 o'clock because I was exhausted from the week. After I got up, I decided to clean out my closet because it was a total mess. I found some old clothes that I didn't wear anymore, so I decided to give them away to a charity shop. Then I met up with my brother for coffee, and we ended up talking for hours about our childhood. It was a really relaxing day. Okay, let's look at what you heard. Slept in means to sleep later than usual. You probably guessed that because I said until 10 o'clock. Clean out means to empty and tidy. Give away means to donate or give for free. Met up with means to meet someone. And ended up doing something means the result was that we did it. Maybe not planned. Even if you didn't know these exact definitions before, the story helped you understand the main idea. This is the power of context again. I also want to touch on the topic of background noise. In the classroom, it is quiet. But in real life, there is noise everywhere. Cars, music, other people talking, the sound of coffee machines, all of this competes for your attention. To practice this, try listening to English in a noisy place. Put on a podcast while you are washing the dishes or while you are on the bus. It will be difficult at first, but your brain will learn to filter out the background noise and focus on the English voice. This is a skill called selective attention. It is like being at a party where there are many conversations happening, but you can focus on just the person you are talking to. You can train your brain to do this with English audio. Start with a quieter environment, then slowly add more noise. This will make real-life situations, like ordering food in a busy restaurant, much less stressful because you will be used to filtering out the distractions. Let's try a more challenging story now, one that has a bit more detail and moves a bit faster, simulating a real conversation between two people. I will play both parts. Imagine you are overhearing two colleagues, Mike and Lisa, talking in the office. Mike says, "Hey Lisa, did you manage to finish that report for the client meeting?" Lisa replies, "Oh, hi Mike. Honestly, I have been working on it all morning, but I am stuck on the financial data. The numbers just don't add up and I can't find the original files." Mike says, "That sounds frustrating. Do you want some help? I have a bit of free time before my lunch break." Lisa says, "That would be amazing. Could you just take a look at the spreadsheet? I think there might be a formula error in column C." Mike says, "Sure thing, send it over. By the way, are we still on for the team dinner tonight?" Lisa says, Yes, definitely. I wouldn't miss it. I heard they are serving Italian food. Mike says, "Great, I'll see you there." Okay, that was a bit of information. Let's check your understanding. What problem is Lisa having? She is having trouble with the financial data in a report, and the numbers aren't adding up. What does Mike offer to do? He offers to help look at the spreadsheet before his lunch break. What are they doing tonight? They are going to a team dinner for Italian food. If you caught those details, you are doing an excellent job of filtering the important information from a conversational, natural speed dialogue. As we continue, I want to talk about the psychological barrier of translating in your head. Many learners listen to English, translate it into their native language in their head, understand the meaning, and then form a response. This is a very slow process. By the time you have translated the first sentence, the speaker is already on their third sentence. To improve your listening comprehension, you must try to cut out the middleman. You need to connect the English sound directly to the meaning without passing through your native language. This is hard, but you can start small. When you see a simple object, like an apple or a chair, do not think the word in your language. Just think apple or chair. Do this with simple actions too. If you are drinking water, think I am drinking water. Training your brain to think in English for simple things will eventually help you understand faster because your brain won't be wasting time translating. It is like upgrading your computer's processor. You are removing a step so everything runs faster. Let's consider the different types of listening materials you can use. Podcasts are fantastic because they are usually conversational and cover topics you enjoy. But listening to the news is also very helpful. Newsreaders speak very clearly and precisely, which is great for training your ear to hear standard pronunciation. However, they also speak quickly, which is good practice for speed. I suggest you try listening to a short news clip, maybe 30 seconds long. Listen to it once. Then, look at the transcript if one is available. Read it while listening to it again. This connects the written word to the spoken sound. Then, listen to it one more time without looking at the text. You will be surprised at how much clearer it sounds the third time. This method of listen, read, listen is one of the most effective ways to improve quickly because it solves the problem of, I know that word when I see it, but I don't recognize it when I hear it. Now, I want to share a personal tip with you. When I was learning a second language, I used to get overwhelmed by long speeches or long videos. It felt like too much information. So, I started breaking things down. I would listen to just 1 minute of a video, maybe the introduction where the person introduces themselves. I would listen to that 1 minute until I understood every word and could repeat it. Then I would move to the next minute. Breaking a big task into small, manageable chunks makes it less scary. You can do this too. Do not feel like you have to watch a whole 2-hour movie without subtitles. Just watch one scene. Master that scene. Understand the jokes, the vocabulary, and the pronunciation. Then move to the next. Success builds confidence, and confidence makes you a better listener because you stop panicking and start enjoying the process. I also want to encourage you to explore different genres of listening. If you always listen to news, you will get very good at news vocabulary, but you might struggle with casual slang used in a sitcom. If you only listen to sitcoms, you might struggle with the formal language used in a business meeting. Variety is the spice of life, and it is also the secret to well-rounded listening skills. Try listening to an audiobook. Audiobooks are wonderful because the narrators usually use excellent expression and intonation. They tell a story, which keeps you engaged. Try listening to a TED Talk. These are great because the speakers are passionate about their topics and they often use clear, structured language. Try listening to a YouTube vlog. Vloggers speak very casually, just like friends, which is great for learning real, everyday English. By mixing these sources, you prepare your ears for anything. Let's do another quick practice exercise, this time focusing on listening for specific instructions. This is a very practical skill. Imagine you are calling a customer service line because your internet is not working. I will play the automated message. Listen carefully to the options. Welcome to QuickNet Internet. If you are calling about a new account, press 1. If you are having technical difficulties, press 2. If you need to pay your bill, press 3. To speak to an operator, please stay on the line. Okay, simple enough. You are having technical difficulties, so you would press 2, but let's make it a bit harder. Now imagine you are listening to a friend giving you directions to their house. Listen closely. So, when you get off the bus, walk straight down the street for about 2 minutes until you see a big blue bank on the corner. Turn left there. Walk past the pharmacy and take the second right. My house is the one with a red door, number 42. Now, let's see if you can visualize this. You get off the bus, walk straight, see a bank, turn left, pass the pharmacy, take the second right. Red door. Visualizing directions is a great way to test your listening because if you miss a word like left or right, you get lost. It forces you to pay close attention to every detail. As we move forward, I want to encourage you to be patient with different dialects. We talked about accents earlier, but dialects are different. Dialects include different vocabulary and grammar rules, not just pronunciation. For example, in some parts of the United Kingdom, people might say, "I am going to the shops to buy some sweets." In the United States, someone would say, "I am going to the store to buy some candy." If you have only learned American English, hearing sweets and shops might confuse you for a second. You might think sweets means sweet like sugar or cake, but context helps. If they are going to a shop to buy it, it is likely candy. Do not let regional differences discourage you. Treat them as interesting variations. English is a global language, and it belongs to everyone who speaks it. The more you listen to different dialects, the more flexible your listening becomes. I also want to mention the importance of minimal pairs. These are pairs of words that sound almost exactly the same, except for one sound. For example, ship and sheep, or cat and cut, or tree and three. If you cannot hear the difference between these sounds, you might misunderstand a whole sentence. I saw a sheep in the field is very different from I saw a ship in the field. One is normal farm life, and the other is a disaster. You can practice these by finding minimal pair videos online. Listen to the 2 words and repeat them until your tongue and ear can feel the difference. For the tree and 3 example, many learners struggle with the th sound. It helps to stick your tongue out slightly between your teeth and blow air. If you say tree with a T sound, it is fine. But if you hear 3, you need to recognize that. Now let's look at some specific strategies that will help you understand fast, native-level speech. One of the best ways to accelerate your listening skills is to understand the difference between 2 types of listening, intensive listening and extensive listening. Think of it like exercise. Extensive listening is like going for a long, slow jog. You are doing it to build general stamina and enjoy the view. In English terms, this means listening to podcasts, watching movies, or listening to the news for a long period of time without stopping. You do not need to understand every word. You just want to get the general idea and enjoy the content. On the other hand, intensive listening is like lifting heavy weights or doing sprint training. It is short, focused, and hard. This is when you take a small piece of audio, maybe just 30 seconds long, and you listen to it over and over again. You write down what you hear. You look up every word. You analyze why the speaker paused there. You need to do both types to become a master. If you only do intensive listening, you might get bored and frustrated. If you only do extensive listening, you might miss the details and keep making the same mistakes. So try to balance your routine. Maybe you listen to a podcast for fun while you cook dinner, and then you spend 10 minutes intensely studying a single clip from a TV show. Let's zoom in on a specific feature of English pronunciation that causes a lot of confusion for B1 and B2 learners, and that is the disappearing sounds, specifically the T sound in the middle of words. In American English especially, when a T is between two vowel sounds, it often changes into a soft DD sound. This is called the flap T. For example, take the word water. It does not sound like water. It sounds like water or butter. It sounds like budder. Even the word better sounds like bedder. If you are listening for a sharp T sound, you will miss it. You might hear bedder and think it is a completely different word, but once you know this rule, your brain will start to recognize it. Let's look at another word, city. It sounds like sidey or party. It sounds like party. When you hear that soft D sound in the middle, check if it might actually be a T. This small realization can unlock a huge number of words for you. Let's try a tricky practice sentence using this flap T sound. I want you to listen and try to write down what you hear in your mind, or just repeat it to yourself to feel the difference. Here is the sentence. I bought a bottle of water at the party. Now listen to how the words change. Bought is clear. Bottle sounds like bottle. Water sounds like water. It sounds like add. Party sounds like party. So it flows like, I bought a bottle of water at the party. It almost sounds like a different language, doesn't it? But if you relax and listen for the rhythm rather than spelling, the meaning becomes clear. This is why spelling can sometimes be a trap for listeners. Forget the spelling for a moment and trust your ears to hear the music of the sentence. Another area that is often difficult is understanding numbers. It seems simple, but numbers are actually some of the hardest things to listen to because they happen so fast. Think about the difference between 13 and 30. When I say 13, my voice goes up at the end. 13. When I say 30, my voice stays flat. 30. In a noisy shop or on the phone, these can sound very similar. Also, long numbers like phone numbers or dates can be hard to hold in your memory. When you are listening to numbers, it is crucial to write them down immediately. Do not try to remember them. If you are in a situation where you cannot write, repeat the number back to the person to confirm. For example, if someone says, my number is 555-823-1910, you say, okay, 555-823-1910. Repetition is your best friend when it comes to numbers. Let's practice a real-life scenario involving numbers and details. Imagine you are calling a hotel to make a reservation. Listen to the receptionist. "Thank you for calling the Grand View Hotel. How can I help you?" You say, "I would like to book a room for next week." The receptionist says, "Certainly." "For which dates?" You say, "From May 12th to May 15th. The receptionist says, "Okay, checking in on May 12th for 3 nights. We have a single room available for $100 a night, or a double room for $150. Which would you prefer?" You say, "I will take the single room, please." The receptionist says, "Perfect. I just need a credit card to secure the booking. The total will be $300 plus tax. Can I have your card number?" Now, let's check the details. When is the person checking in? May 12th. How many nights? 3 nights. Which room did they choose? The single room. Why? Because the double was too expensive, presumably. How much is the single room? $100 a night. If you caught those details, you successfully processed numerical information within a conversation. This is a high-level skill. I also want to talk about collocations. A collocation is a group of words that naturally go together. Native speakers use these without thinking, but for learners, they can be surprising. For example, we say, "make a mistake," not "do a mistake." We say, "take a photo," not "do a photo." If you are listening and someone says, "I did a mistake," you might understand them, but it sounds strange. However, when you are listening, knowing collocations helps you predict what is coming next. If you hear the word "make," your brain can start guessing the next word might be a decision, a cake, money, or friends. This prediction speeds up your processing. You don't have to wait until the end of the sentence to understand. To practice this, try to learn phrases in chunks, not single words. Don't just learn the word decision. Learn the phrase make a decision. Don't just learn homework. Learn do your homework. When you hear the first word of the chunk, the second word pops into your head automatically. Let's try a story now that uses a lot of these collocations and connected speech. This is a story about a man named David who is trying to learn how to cook. Close your eyes and listen. David decided he wanted to cook a special dinner for his wife's birthday. He usually just ordered pizza, but this time he wanted to make an effort. He looked up a recipe online for beef stew. It looked easy enough, but he soon realized he didn't have the right equipment. He tried to chop the vegetables with a small knife, and it took him forever. Then he accidentally spilled salt all over the counter. He started to panic, thinking the whole evening was ruined, but eventually he managed to get everything into the pot. When his wife came home, she smelled the food and smiled. She didn't care that the kitchen was a mess. She was just happy that he put in so much effort. Okay, let's analyze. Did David order pizza? No, he decided to cook. What did he try to make? Beef stew. Did he have an easy time? No, it was difficult. He didn't have the right equipment and he spilled salt. How did the wife react? She was happy about his effort. Did you catch the phrase, make an effort and put in effort? Those are collocations. Hearing them together makes the sentence flow better. Now let's discuss the challenge of listening to a group of people. So far, we have mostly talked about one person speaking. But in real life, you are often at a party or a meeting where multiple people are talking. People interrupt each other, they talk over each other, and they change topics quickly. This is the hardest form of listening. One tip for this is to focus on the speaker who is looking at you. or the person whose voice is the loudest at that moment. Usually, in a group, there is a floor holder, the person who is currently telling the story or giving the opinion. You can track the conversation by watching people's eyes and body language, not just listening with your ears. If someone leans forward and opens their mouth, they are probably about to speak. If everyone is laughing, you missed a joke, and that is okay. Just laugh along and pick up the thread of the conversation when the noise dies down. Do not try to understand every sentence in a chaotic group chat. Just aim for the general topic. Another aspect of advanced listening is understanding sarcasm and humor. This is very difficult because it often requires understanding the culture, not just the language. Sarcasm is when someone says the opposite of what they mean, usually in a funny or ironic way. For example, if it is raining very hard outside, and I say, "What lovely weather we are having," I am being sarcastic. My words say, "lovely," but the rain and my tone tell you the weather is actually bad. If you take my words literally, you will be confused. To catch sarcasm, you have to listen for that exaggerated tone. Does the voice sound too dramatic? Does the person have a little smile on their face? If the words are positive but the situation is negative, it is probably sarcasm. As you watch more English TV shows and movies, pay attention to when the audience laughs. Try to figure out why. Was it a funny word or was it an ironic situation? Let's try to identify some feelings in a short dialogue. Imagine two friends, John and Amy, talking about a movie. John says, "So, what did you think of the new superhero movie?" Amy replies, "Oh my God, it was absolutely incredible. The special effects were mind-blowing." John says, "I know, right? I was on the edge of my seat the whole time." Amy says, "Me too. I almost cried at the end." Now, did they like the movie? Yes, clearly. How do we know? Words like incredible, mind-blowing, and on the edge of my seat. These are strong, emotional words. Now let's flip it. John asks, "Did you like the play last night?" Amy replies, "Well, the acting was okay, I suppose, but the story was so slow I fell asleep halfway through." John says, "Oh no, that sounds terrible. I am glad I didn't go." Here, Amy is being polite but negative. "Okay, I suppose," is not enthusiastic. Fell asleep is a very strong sign she was bored. Listening for these descriptive words and phrases helps you understand the speaker's opinion without them having to say, "I liked it," or "I hated it" directly. I want to take a moment to talk about a tool that almost everyone has in their pocket, but few people use effectively for learning: the speed control. On most podcast apps and video players like YouTube, you can change the speed of the audio. You can make it slower, like 0.75 times speed, or faster, like 1.25 times speed. If you are finding a podcast too fast, do not be afraid to slow it down. It will not hurt your learning. In fact, hearing the words slowly can help you separate the sounds that are usually blended together. Once you understand it at 0.75 times speed, try listening to it again at normal speed. It will suddenly seem much easier. Conversely, if normal speed is becoming easy for you, try speeding it up to 1.25 times. This trains your brain to process information faster. It is like baseball players swinging a heavy bat in the on-deck circle, so the regular bat feels light when they step up to the plate. Playing audio faster is a great way to challenge yourself. Let's do a more complex listening exercise now. This one is a bit of a mystery. I am going to describe a situation, and I want you to listen for the clues to solve a small problem. Here is the situation. Sarah walked into her office on Monday morning and saw that her favorite coffee mug was missing from her desk. She looked around and saw it on Bob's desk, on the other side of the room. She walked over to Bob. Bob was not at his desk yet. She picked up her mug, but it was still full of old, cold coffee. She looked inside and saw that there was a lipstick mark on the rim. Sarah never wears lipstick. Also on Bob's desk, there was a pink sticky note that said, "Thanks for the coffee. See you later." Okay, mystery time. Who took Sarah's mug? It seems like Bob took it, or maybe someone else gave it to Bob. Did Bob drink from it? No, the coffee was still there and cold. There was a lipstick mark, and Sarah doesn't wear lipstick, so it is likely that a woman, perhaps someone who wears pink lipstick, took Sarah's mug, drank from it, and then left it on Bob's desk with a note. The note says, "Thanks for the coffee," which implies the person thought the mug was Bob's or they were sharing it. The important thing here is that you had to listen to several details, the cold coffee, the lipstick, the note, to figure out what happened. This is called inference. You are hearing the facts and then using logic to understand the truth. Let's try one final, longer story to test everything we have discussed. I will try to speak at a natural, slightly fast pace, just like a real conversation. Ready? Here we go. Last weekend, my friends and I decided to go on a road trip to the mountains. We rented a van because there were, 6 of us. We packed a lot of food, sandwiches, chips, and drinks. We started driving early in the morning to avoid traffic. The drive was beautiful. We saw the sun rising over the hills. However, about an hour into the trip, the van started making a strange noise. It sounded like a clunk, clunk, clunk. We pulled over to the side of the road. My friend Dave, who knows a bit about cars, checked the engine. He said he thought it was the tire. We got out and saw that one of the back tires was flat. Fortunately, we had a spare tire in the back. It took us about 20 minutes to change it. We got a little dirty, but we were laughing about it. We continued our journey and arrived at the cabin just before lunch. We spent the rest of the day hiking and cooking BBQ. It was a great adventure. Okay, let's check your understanding. How many people went? 6. What kind of transport? A rented van. What went wrong? They had a flat tire. The car made a clunking noise. How did they solve it? They changed it themselves with a spare tire. Did this ruin the trip? No, they still had a great adventure. If you followed that story without pausing, your listening comprehension is getting very strong. We have covered so much today. We talked about intensive versus extensive listening, the schwa sound, the flap T, numbers, collocations, understanding groups, sarcasm, speed controls, making inferences, and dialects. I hope you feel more confident now. Listening is a journey, and it is okay to have days where you feel like you understand everything and days where you feel like you understand nothing. That is normal. Be patient with yourself. Celebrate the small victories, like understanding a joke in a movie or catching the train time at the station. Those moments add up. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I am Jessica, and this is English in Advance. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps us make more content for you. And leave a comment below telling me about your experience with listening. Is it the weather report that is hard? Or maybe fast movies? Let me know. I love hearing from you. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you never miss an episode. Keep practicing, keep listening, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye for now.